everybody. This is Joe Stanislaw. I am the genealogist of my family. I recently did my Ancestry DNA test last year, and I did it in February. And to this date, 52 weeks ago, I would have told you my predictions that come out pretty wild. Also, I've had some family members take the test. My father, my grandmother, my stepfather, they've all taken the test, and it's come back as what I expected, even with a few surprises. First off, I'm going to start out with my father. My father is of Polish and Lithuanian parents who were born in the States, but my father's parents, who came from Lithuania, left in 1918 to come to a town in upstate New York called Amsterdam. Now, Amsterdam was named after the Dutch city of Amsterdam. So there were people that lived there a long time ago, and Amsterdam was a very industrial place to work and live long time ago. But today it's starting to, get more industrialized. When I was a kid in the 90s all the way to early 2000s, there wasn't a whole lot going on. But now, companies like Target and Walmart, Home Depot, they've had built some traction in Amsterdam, and they've started to really get a lot of business going. So back to my father grew up in Amsterdam, New York, and his grandfather was in the Russian Revolution, and apparently my grandfather said his father served in the Russian army. And sometimes people will stare at me, they'll look at me like, you look Russian. And I kind of think about that story. That kind of got me doing that DNA test. And I also have my great grandparents from Lithuania. I have a photo in my bedroom that my grandma gave me for Christmas. And I actually asked for it because when my parents had divorced years ago, my father sent that to his mother, my grandmother, and she kept it in really great shape. And along with a little miscue, she ended up putting in what would be my father's cousin, her, children's photos and that little package. And so when I got that Christmas gift sent from my grandmother, and I said, Batya, did you know that there were a couple of photos that you had put? And she goes, you know what? I didn't remember that. And I said, well, your niece is actually one of my matches. And I didn't know much about her, and I ended up saying, oh, wow. I have her in my matches. And we've been messaging back and forth because Mary Beth, my father's cousin on my grandma Stanislaus side, she's the Polish one. So I end up messaging her, and I end up gifting it and sending it through USPS, and she ended up getting it, and she was very thrilled. And we started communicating. Now I am very thankful for Ancestry for doing such a great job at matching me with Mary Beth, and Mary Beth being able to communicate with me. And I would like to urge my fellow millennials to actually do that test. And there's actually a sale right now, winter sale right now for $69 for the time being. Now, anyways, I recently became an uncle. December 10th, my sister Jill gave birth to a nephew of mine named Mac Joseph Julian, and I am very proud to have him on board, and I'm going to be going to see him very soon. I'd also like to talk more about my father's mother's side. So my father's mother, her parents come from Żołębia Polska, or Żołębia, Poland, which is like, if you look at the map of Poland, you'd spell Poland, well, the town in Poland, Zolya, but the L actually has a hash, which makes it a W in the Polish language. So that's a W sound. So for you English speakers like me, you'd get confused very easily when you see Żołębia. No, it's Żołębia. So a long time ago, Żołębia was actually part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And how did I find this out? My grandmother's father was actually in the Austro-Hungarian military. And there was a military passport that one of my father's cousins had actually saved in his safe, and his wife took out during tax season years ago, and his wife found out that my great grandfather Josef Cyprian Zawicki was part of the Austro-Hungarian military, and this was back in 1900 to 1904. And in that military passport, the ink is in blue, red, and black. Back in those days, the borders would change, and when you would cross the border, the military passport would get stamped by a border guard or someone. So that's how authorization of travel between the empire. So Żołębia was actually Austria for that time. And after my great-grandfather technically left, he ended up moving to Amsterdam as well. So there are records that showed like his father, his mother, all connected. When I was looking at my great-grandma Agnes Kochmański. So this is my grandmother's mother. So she and her husband put down on the registry showing that they were the parents of the groom. And then there were the parents of the bride. And this is kind of how like I had this eureka moment. And then I also said, "Hey, Batya, do you know Szczepan Kochmański?" And she goes, "Yes, that's a relative." And I was like, "Yes, thank you, Ancestry, for those hints." Now, I would like to also move over to my mother's side. I'm not going to make this too boring, but my mother's family on her maternal line has been in New Jersey. That's right, New Jersey. New Jersey and New York at one point were part of what was called New Netherlands. Root word, Netherlands. So I have family documents that prove that I am of Dutch heritage. But I also have a little extra French as well on that side, as well as English and potentially Scottish, and a little bit of Northeast Ireland. So there is a family that came to what is modern-day Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And for those of you ever heard the term lookout, in Dutch the term is called kijkout. Kijkout, something like that. Anyways, I just told you the name of the translation of the word. So there's a place in Greenpoint called Meserole Street, Meserole. Over the years, the last name has differentiated multiple times. At one time, my sixth great grandfather, Jean Meserole, who was a Frenchman, and his wife, my sixth great grandmother, technically was from what they called Ringlet, Flanders, but according to the Brooklyn Library, my sister looked that up, and I even saw it online and showed that she was from the Netherlands. And technically, that part of Flanders was the Dutch part. So she was a Dutch woman. So her last name was Carten. And there were other family members on the other side of her that were Praz, or Pray, as my mama say, Praa. And then there were Provosts. So then there was another family, Van Kessels. Yes, hockey fans, that means from Kessel. Spelled the same way Phil Kessel would have. I'm not sure if I would be related to Phil Kessel. If I was related to him, I probably would have had him in my matches by now. But I'm not going to grow a big nose on that one, because I'm admitting I'm probably not related to Kessel. So I do, however, as a kid growing up in Western Mass, where I was born, I was more brought up with my mom's side. My mother's mother, her family's been in New Jersey / New York since 1664. They had settlement down in North Brunswick and New Brunswick, New Jersey, where today you can look at, there's the Rutgers Cook campus, where they do the agricultural stuff. That's where my cousin Tyler Clark Astor went to school, and he did turf and field management. And apparently we also have family that had farmland in that area a long time ago. So things have changed, and that part of New Jersey has become a little bit more industrial, and more retail centers are there and stuff like that. But before that, it was mainly farmland done by people who were from England, the Netherlands, Scandinavia, stuff like that. And I apparently have 3% Scandinavian. Apparently on my Dutch side, there was one family member who I found out was from Ham, Norway, which is like the northwest side, which is like, if you look downward, you could see like northern France, which is where Jean Meserole came from, in Calais, or there's another town called Picardie, Picardie, in France, like near Belgium. And also the Netherlands is right next door to Belgium. So I also have on my grandmother, on my maternal line, she married into another person who happened to become my grandfather, named Donald Gene Astor. And his father was from Italy, a town called Gizzeria in Calabria, in Catanzaro. His family goes all the way back to 1770 in Italy. So my mom's cousin Bobby did some documentation off that. Had a guy look up in the township of Jitzeria, like the birth record of my great grandfather, that it is indeed true, and it is. And of course, on Gaspare's family, he ended up marrying a woman who was of Belgian parents. Her name was Juliette Lessire, and that Lessire name is my great grandmother, and she happens to be of the Dutch parents. They apparently, according to Ancestry, they had a document saying that Felix Lessire, my great grandfather, spoke Flemish, and apparently his wife married Donna Obanu, or Ubano, Eabineau, and to me that's where more of the Dutch and the French begins to resonate. Here in America, I tend to think of myself not necessarily American. I tend to think of myself as someone who thinks a little bit more French and Dutch. I obviously, my allegiance is to New Jersey and Western Pennsylvania. I do not like Philadelphia, honestly. Philadelphia, I don't like their sports fans. Sorry, I just don't. I honestly, my mother's father's family has lived in Western Pennsylvania since they came from Italy and Belgium. So when I go out to Pittsburgh, I actually like going out to a Permanis or even going out to a Pirates game once in a while. My cousins out in Western Pennsylvania live out in Erie and Meadville, so when sometimes people hear me and they come from like New York City and they hear my voice, I say it's time to go home. Like my vowels are like that. That's just the way I speak. But a lot of people say, "Well, so you were born in Massachusetts," but actually, my father's family's from upstate New York. My mother's side is from New Jersey and Western Pennsylvania. So, yeah, I'm more laid back for someone who lives in a state where everything's looked at totally different. If you're from North Jersey, most people always think you talk like a New Yorker, like the non-erotic. Or as people like to think about people from South Jersey who live in the Philly territory. They tend to talk more like a Southerner. That's not always true. People migrate. People come in from other states because they reside one place, they find a job, or they meet someone special, and when that kid grows up, like for instance, my sister, she's very much like me. She likes to engage, chat, very open-minded, a little too funny sometimes. But my brother-in-law, he's very laid back, calm, and I said to my brother-in-law, I said, well, if my nephew doesn't do so well with basketball, you might as well make him a hockey goaltender if he can have those mindsets of being calm, cool, collected. Nowadays, I told him nowadays, goaltenders are taller than 6 feet, and my sister is 5'10". My brother-in-law is about 6'5". My father is about 6'4". I should have been 6'2", but I'm technically 5'9". My eldest sister, Lindsay, is about 5'10", 5'9.5". Yeah, my mom is still a little bit taller than me, but my mother's blood uncle, Norman Meserole, was a tackle for University of Tennessee. He was about 6'5", and I met his son, Scotty Meserole, and he's about close to that height. So the tall gene is pretty prevalent in my family, and also if someone in that family has a lot of athletic gene, my great uncle Norm, his son, has mainly Western European and UK region in his percentages. My father apparently is about 97% Eastern European and partly Finnic Russian. And I have a little Finnic Russian, but I'm 59% Eastern European and 24% UK. Which, if you look at the map on Ancestry, UK doesn't just mean the United Kingdom. It also means northern France. If you think about the Norman invasion a little bit, where you have the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes, who also been part of those lands. So the Netherlands is in there, and Belgium's in there. So one of the shocking things was I found out I was 3% European Jewish, but my paternal great-grandfather's name was Salomonas Stanislavicius, and his wife was Salomea. So I'm not sure if it comes from that side, but I also found out I'm 6% Iberian, which means people from Barcelona, like, they're going to try and become Catalonia, people from Portugal, and people from Spain. And apparently I'm more Iberian than I am Italian Greek. So it was a bit of a shocker, but I also found out I was less than 1% Middle East and less than 1% Caucasus. However, everything is pretty dead on. Like, Ancestry has it nailed. And I honestly think if you're a millennial and you're wondering, whether you go on holiday or vacation like I do, one year I was going out to Italy to explore my Italian roots. I was flying Swiss International, and because I'm blonde and blue eye, I was greeted in High German, and at that time I didn't speak any German, but knowing that I was flying Swiss International, I ended up speaking Italian and French to them. So they actually showed me the way to my seat in German, and I spoke to them in French and Italian and English. So, like, I'm one of those Americans that when I go to Europe, I'm more European, but I'm more European to begin with here in America. I tend to think of myself as more European-minded, and I honestly watch more hockey these days. I don't watch the NFL anymore. I gave up on Major League Baseball. To be quite honest, I actually I like to travel, and I love foreign languages, and speaking French, speaking German, learning Dutch are one of my favorite languages, and it's hard to just pick one. But anyways, I think for those of you millennials and other generations looking at this video, maybe I've answered some, or given you some ideas, but also Don't be afraid to talk to the family and get them to tell you more about themselves and put together your profile, which in the end, if you're going to want to explore deeply, you're going to have to do either the US or the world one or the international one. There's a couple of things that Ancestry has so you can dig in deeply. But if you have some basic facts about your family tree, just assemble it step by step, and when you find your DNA matches, it's all going to add up well. And if you can go back further as you can, that's wonderful. Anyways, leave me comments below. Make sure they're polite, but I respect other people's opinions. Thank you, and have a great day.